Thank you for joining me for Where I'm From 221 with Alyson, who spells her name the same way as me. So it's little things. Um, I read The Translator's Daughter by Grace Lowe Prasad. It's a memoir about so many things. The Taiwanese language, grief, community. I was really struck by, I did not know that Grace had lost her brother. So, of course, that really resonated with me. Hi, Allison.
How are
You did
you?
so good.
I tried so hard. I tried so hard to get in here the right way. I'm not,
You
technology is not my thing.
you got an A plus.
There you go.
Um, how are you?
Good. You do your thing. Aren't you going to talk about a book? I didn't mean to
I
interrupt.
read this book and it's interesting, The Translator's Daughter by Grace Lowe Prasad, because she writes about being the only one left. Um, and and so do you. So that was interesting synergy for the
There you
day.
go. There you go. Did you like it?
I did. I thought it was really it's about she's a Taiwanese American and it's about the diaspora and I find writings about that, about belonging and community and really interesting because I think in different ways we all reckon with those things. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
um and grief and just and how little space there is for grief in the world that we live in. And I mean, I have found that to be true. And I was just talking to a friend about it. I mean, I think we're all experiencing so much grief, like a lot of the time. And I don't want to spoil your poem.
No,
So,
no, it's okay.
you have yours that you're dealing with.
It's okay.
Um, yeah.
But what is what's it called? All There Is, the podcast by
Mm,
Anderson Cooper is really interesting to listen to
yeah.
if you never have it. It just says grief lives with us. It's not out
Yeah.
there in the open all the time, but it
No.
lives with us, and it's kind of a neat thing
He's
to listen to
great. And that
people.
he's talking about it and using his platform to talk about it because, I don't know if you've heard, because I don't know how much you've put your memoir out into the world, but lots of times when a person writes about grief, they hear back, oh, nobody really wants to read about this. This is not a topic that people want to engage with, which is always a bit dumbfounding to me. I guess it's like, okay, it's
Well,
evergreen, sadly. I
well,
mean,
it is actually. You're right, and it is. It's a human condition. It's
yeah,
everywhere. But
yeah.
I think right now, I mean, because I actually didn't proceed with mine last person standing kind of title because I thought it was just too
Hmm.
miserable, and nobody wants to read a misery memoir, and
Yeah.
unless, of course, you're someone famous. Which I guess is why the podcast
Mhm.
that Anderson Cooper
Yeah.
is working on is so interesting because we recognize that, okay, it's not just me, it's not just my neighbor, it's not just my friend down the street. It's famous people also deal with loss of
Yeah.
and it's not just loss of other people's lives. It's loss of youth. It's loss of
Yeah.
physical capabilities. It's loss of something
Yeah.
that we all deal with, right? It's part
Hmm.
of it's part of life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Um, I I co-edited a sibling loss anthology, so these are the kinds of
Right, right.
conversations we had a lot of, and we, I mean, every sibling is the last one standing if they outlive someone. I mean, there is in every family a sibling who is the last
Absolutely.
one standing. So
That's
it's
right.
yeah, um, and it's something we discussed, like how do you anyway. So
Very,
let's
very,
read
very
your let's hear your
an
poem.
upbeat way to talk, an upbeat way to talk. But you want me to start with my poem? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Where I'm from. I am from flannel nighties, from hair bobbles and Barbie dolls, Speedo bathing suits and chlorine-damaged hair. I am from the suburban backsplit. My mother, Martha, stewarded before Martha Stewart-ing was a thing. I am from lemon pledge, floor polish, and freshly cut grass. My father tells my sister and me we are two lofty and smart beauties, that we can be anything, but we must always say please and thank you and call the neighbors Mr. and Mrs. Oh, and I'm from where we spell neighbor with a U. I'm from where we open gifts on Christmas Eve, as my mother's German ancestors did. I'm from cabbage rolls and roast beef with Yorkshire pudding, pierogi, and trifle. I thought I was from a very tall, unnamed relative in Poland, as was my father, who towered over his two lofty daughters. Turns out my tall DNA comes from the Ukrainian man my grandmother loved, but who was not her husband. I'm from my father, the product of his mother's affair. Did Dad ever know the short man he called Dad had nothing to do with his conception? I'm from my father, who quit drinking but died of alcoholism 5 years later just the same. I'm from my witty and talented mother, who packed it in a decade later. I am from my once gorgeous baby sister, blessed with my father's very long legs, but also his taste for booze. I am Nancy Drew, who peruses brittle photos from a book smelling of damp basement in search of clues and wonders why she is the last one standing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Um, yeah, so we were sort of talking about it before you wrote it, but what was your experience like writing this? So is this sort of the same territory as your memoir, which if everyone hasn't read her bio in the post, she's considering abandoning. And after hearing this poem, would encourage you not to.
Well, there's so many mysteries. I mean, even you and I talked about a mystery when you and I exchanged inadvertent emails because I inadvertently sent you something to myself. I thought I was sending myself. And because our names start with Alyson with a Y, S with
I
Shelton
know.
and Soko, it got sent to you. And you said, Alyson, I don't think you meant for this to be to me. I said, no, you're right. I was just sending myself an Instagram post. But we got talking. I said, how did your parents name you Alyson with a Y? And I forget how we even, the conversation continued. But I said, I remember my mother telling me that I was named after a character on Peyton Place.
Yeah.
Well, this is where the whole mystery thing, and this is why I'm abandoning my memoirs, because there's so many mysteries that you can't solve. So I go on, and I thought, well, who was the character? And I look, and there was a character called Alison Mackenzie, played by Mia Farrow,
Yeah.
who I look nothing like. She's a petite little thing, and I'm a monster. And anyway, but then I realized, then I Googled Peyton Place, and it aired the first time in September of 1964.
Mhm.
Well, I was born in May of 1962.
Mhm.
So what the heck? So that's the
Well, but did
challenge.
we talk about the book? Was it a book? How
Well, I
to
think there
Kill?
was a serial. I think there was a serial, but
Yeah, I think there was.
I'd
Hmm.
have to look and I
Hmm.
haven't
And
delved
was
that
it spelled
far.
with a Y,
No,
Allison? Okay,
no,
I didn't think
The
so.
Allison Mackenzie wasn't either. So
Okay.
I thought, okay. So then I thought, thinking, okay, maybe my father, whose name was Alfred, went by Al.
Oh.
So we used to joke, Al's son. I said, maybe my father, even though he
Mm,
never admitted it, was really wanted a son, Al's son.
mm.
Anyway, who knows? But that's the challenge with my memoir, is there are so many loose ends.
Sure.
And I worry that the reader would just say, what the heck? She doesn't know what she's doing. She's making all these
Mm.
suppositions. So I've actually thought about fictionalizing the whole darn thing.
Yeah.
Because my grandmother, I think, is the most interesting character anyway, because she was not very well liked, to be honest with you. I didn't know her.
Hmm.
She died when I was 5. So, there's no
Is
love
she the one
lost
who
there.
had an affair?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So there's lots of, I could make it quite juicy if I wanted to.
Mm. There is
So
some liberty in being able to make things up,
yes, yes. It's like that
for
book.
sure.
The Postcard. I don't know if you've heard it by Anne Barrest.
Mm-mm.
She's a French author, and she writes a novel, which she is absolutely in, but it's a
Yes.
novel because she
Yes.
creates scenes of an aunt of hers being in Auschwitz, and there's no way she
Mm.
could have recreated those scenes as she did, but I understood why she did it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, there are definitely, I mean, autobiographical fiction or autofic. There is definitely freedom there that you can't in a memoir. And I
yeah,
do understand why people do it. And I think it's interesting because I love memoir as a form. Like it is something that I enjoy reading, and I read a lot of it because I like how inconvenient life is because I have found it to be so. So when I read it, I think, oh yeah, that's feels relatable. Where fiction, things are so neat and tidy, but I think a lot of people are drawn to that, to the neat and
yeah.
tidiness of it.
Need, especially I think nowadays, because the
Mhm.
world is so confusing. Things that you can sort of
Mhm.
say, okay, there,
Yeah.
done.
Yes.
Understood it. I think I
Hmm.
understand it. Can I think about the themes? Yes. Okay, check that box, move on to the next.
Yeah.
But Anyway, so I mean, but I don't like autofiction either because I've read a few and I think, okay, is this part real or is that part real?
Yeah.
So I am thinking if I do it, the real parts will be me sort of studying through, and my
Mm,
suppositions will be there, but then I'll have to create some imaginary scenes without all the perhaps she said this and I
right.
imagine she did that because
Right.
I've written those and there's just way too many of those qualifying phrases. You kind of get lost in them. But I do like writing them. I do like writing them.
I mean, I think, writing this poem and writing memoir and writing better stuff, I have found it very helpful in finding myself, finding the edges of myself and where they bump up against the world.
Well, because where I'm from, it can be anything. It's where you're
Yes.
from physically,
Hmm.
it's where you're from in time, what decade had its influences on you. It's from your parents, it's from your family, it's from, the hardships or the ease with which you've flowed through life. It's so many things. So
Yeah.
you can take that title and do
Yes.
a whole bunch with it. And depending on your mood, you'd write a very
Yes.
different poem sometimes.
Yeah. And I have to write it one because I write one on my birthday, which is next month. So I gotta
Right, you
write one.
mentioned that.
I'm reminding myself that it's on the to-do list. Because I don't think about it except right now. And then I go live my life. But so did you enjoy the experience? Did you find it overlapped with your memoir? What did you feel?
Well, I did, and a friend who's read a lot of what I've written said, "Oh my God, like it's your memoir in like
Mhm.
in however many words this is, 250
Mhm.
words." I said, "Yeah, it is. That's the whole thing. So maybe I just need to write an essay, like a 250 word essay, a flash piece. There's my whole memoir." But yeah, I mean, there's a lot more that went on in this
Of
study,
course.
and all these half cousins I found, and all sorts of interesting characters, and all sorts of lore I found on their side of the family, and
Mhm.
like there's family lore everywhere, and that's the thing. And so we grew up thinking we know where we're from, but then we realized, well, maybe that wasn't even true. The things we have taken on, the lies we tell ourselves or the lies we're told
Mhm.
that we believe, and
Mhm.
then we just, they're dispelled or we dispel them. And sometimes that's painful because either we don't really want to know or people around us don't want to know.
Yeah.
I mean, I have two aunts that are still living. One's 95 and one's 90. I call the 90-year-old the cool aunt because when I told her what I learned, she said, "Oh, she goes, that everybody's fooling around then." She goes, "But you're still my niece." I said, "Of course I am." Like her kids are adopted. I said, "Your kids are still my cousins." I said, "Of course." My other aunt wanted nothing to do with it. She
Hmm.
did not want to even have the conversation. And so I just promised her I would never mention it again. So that's, and I mean, and had this been had I discovered that it was my father that wasn't my
Hmm.
father,
Hmm.
I think it would be altogether different. And so
Hmm.
for my aunts, I have to recognize this is their brother that
Yes.
they're having to deal with.
Yeah.
So I can, I've got kind of distance.
Hmm.
If you read Danny Shapiro's book or Keel
Hmm.
McClear's book, where it's their dad that raised
Yep.
them, they discover wasn't really their biological father, you can understand it's a real gut punch. With me, I'm
Yeah.
removed. I
Yeah.
can kind of, I'm looking at it more, I've tried to find out, did this fellow have a drinking problem?
Hmm.
Well, his two sons with his wife did. I learned that one died of cirrhosis. So, it is amazing what you find out.
Hmm.
But I was doing it with a little bit of distance
Hmm. I
as
love that she
opposed.
said everyone was fooling around back then.
Oh,
That's that certainly goes against our perception of that time.
I know. Well, that was before I'd actually found my father. That was when I heard from this woman out of the blue. How are we related? I have no idea. And that was only later that I recognized how much DNA we shared was actually quite
Mm-hmm.
significant. And it turns out we're half cousins and we share the same grandfather. But I sat on this information for months before I actually even.
So you're the one who discovered it. You did the.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I did the DNA test with my
Hmm.
cousins, my father's niece, and discovered that we
Hmm.
were half cousins. So that kind
Hmm.
of led me on this path, but it led me back to this woman who'd reached out to me years before, and and we finally figured out how we were connected through this same man. But anyway, it was an interesting journey. It was lots of fun because it wasn't as an emotional charge. It wasn't as emotionally charged as, again, had it been my dad. I was
Hmm.
delving into, as opposed to trying to find this grandfather who I still don't have a picture of. Still don't know how tall he was because my dad was really tall. That's what started all this. Is he
Hmm.
was 6'5" and his siblings were quite short.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, it was a lot of fun, but there's still lots of uncertainty
Yeah.
around. how well, and did my dad ever know?
Right, right. You can't, yeah, unless
Yeah,
you believe in those kinds of things, you can't really ask them. Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Well,
So
and then I also really enjoyed your characterizations of what it was like to grow up and be told you can be anything, but also thank you and please and Mr. and Mrs. I was absolutely horrid at calling anybody Mr. and Mrs. And it was not as popular here. Like it was sort of sometimes, sometimes not. And then I moved to the Midwest and it was very much in vogue there still in like the 90s. And my heart was never in it, Allison.
well, I think I'm a little older than you, so that was what we were supposed to do. And
Yeah.
so for years, I would call my friends' parents like, I
Hmm.
said, well, I can't call them Bill and Betty. That just doesn't
Hmm.
feel right. Like they're not Bill and
Hmm.
Betty. They're Mr. and Mrs. McNeil.
Hmm.
But now when my kids would bring friends home
Right.
and they'd call me, I said, oh, just call me Allison. Like,
Right.
forget it. Like I
Right.
just couldn't, because I
Oh
wanted my
no.
kids to do it, but then I didn't want their friends to do it to me. So I was talking out of both sides of my mouth.
I think it's funny though. It was a sign of respect, which also I chafed against just that whole notion that grown-ups deserved respect. Why? Because they were older. And I still do. I still chafe against that notion because I don't find that just because someone's older than me means absolutely anything, or if they're younger than me, you know. But I felt like you really captured that sort of in between where it's like we're beginning to say you can be anything because but also please stay very proper and
Yeah, yeah.
appropriate at all times. It's like, well,
But my dad, I think because he had two girls, my sister and me, there was none of this, well, you're going to get married and be a housewife and that's your role.
yeah,
That was never him. Like I could do anything.
yeah,
And whereas I don't think a lot of girls, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and I don't think some girls ever got that message from their
no,
dads.
I don't think so.
So I
I mean,
guess
honestly, I think to this day that some girls don't get those messages from their dads, which is heartbreaking, but true.
true, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he just thought I could do whatever we wanted. Well, as long as it was where we grew up. Because heaven
Hmm.
for like I still remember him saying, well, I don't want you to go travel in Europe. I said, well, why not? Because you're going to meet somebody and you're going to move to Italy and obviously you're going to, so, you know. And I found that the nice thing about traveling is, and yes, some people do move to Italy and France and whatever, but I found the nice thing about being from where I'm from is that I'd come home and think, yeah, we're not perfect here. Living in Toronto and Canada, we're not perfect. But boy, oh boy, it's not a bad place to live. It
Yeah.
really is quite lovely. And yeah, it doesn't have the cobblestone streets that
Hmm.
old towns in Europe do and what
Hmm.
have you. But regardless, it's still a pretty nice place to live your life. And I'm sure that's why a lot of people do. And Canadians, I don't think travel far from home as much as Americans do in terms of relocating.
Hmm.
But I do think that we'll always feel comfortable where we grew up. Unless we
You
have
hope
bad
so.
memories there. Yeah,
Yeah,
unless we
of
always have
course.
bad memories there. That sometimes people
But I
do.
think sometimes even when you do have both good and bad, which I do, still the place, the land, the seasons or lack thereof to outsiders, all feel like home to me,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, just yeah, you can walk, and even though the streets change and
Yeah,
buildings
I
get torn
know.
down, new buildings get taken,
They
you
sure
know,
do.
but some things don't change, and even those changing things, you go, wow, like this is progress, and isn't
Oh.
what it looked like before. But well, progress or not, whatever, depending on your perspective, right?
I love that. You feel that way still. I just like, okay. Sometimes I'm like, it could all slow down. Just because of I'm living in a country right now where I feel like progress is oftentimes backwards progress.
Yeah,
And that's
I think I
difficult.
think I think the world agrees with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's part of I think that's part of the reason I'm really appreciating these poems in a different way is like speaking honestly about what was great. That it was far more complex than most people want. Most people are in a position to uh, use it for political reasons. It was never great. Like it's always been complicated, and certain people benefited from it, and certain people didn't. And that's really actually what what they want to return to, um, because yeah, it was a lot of people didn't have a voice back then, um, and I think when I hear the poems, yeah, I hear, because it's mostly women who join me, um, them struggling with that, growing up and thinking about where they're from and finding their voice.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, it is interesting how the pendulum has swung, and I guess it's people are trying to push it back the other way. But I do executive search for a living still, and people will
Yeah.
phone me up about wanting to get on a board, and I'll say, well, unfortunately, I'm very blunt. I'll say you're a middle-aged white guy. Like,
Right, right.
can't help you,
It's not your
you
time
know,
for once.
can't help you. Um, and 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 they're upset about it because you're right. They're
Yes.
still talented individuals,
Mhm.
but unfortunately, that's not what people are trying to do right now. I'll still say right now, they still weren't what people are trying to do is to create diverse communities and what have you. But anyway, we'll see. We'll see what the world looks like in a few years' time.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I have to believe, and I was just having this conversation, I have to believe that small things matter. Like it's what gets me out of bed in the morning because I can't, like, I'm not a billionaire. I can't do these large scale things that they're doing, but I have to believe that all of us doing the small things that we can do matters. Because because that's what we can do.
Yeah,
And I think when we stop doing it, then they win. So
yeah.
I was also thinking because I don't know if you're in that memoir binder on Facebook, but I am, and a friend of mine just sold her book, and she's been working on it for a long time, and she's wonderful. And it made me so happy because helping people or believing that people's stories matter has like changed my life. And I think that they do. And so I do hope that no matter what you choose to do with your story, Allison, that you do keep telling it because I think it matters.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for the encouragement because we all have these moments where we kind of
Oh
say,
yeah,
ah,
all the time.
yeah.
Constantly. Last week, like, what's the point? Why am I, but I always feel there's a point in showing up here and hearing someone else's story. So then sometimes I have to apply that to myself, however uncomfortable that is. Um, but yeah, it's constant. And I think maybe even the act of telling it and thinking it's worthwhile is powerful. I think I think that matters even. Like whether you sell it or people read it or it's like there's something about just believing that your story matters that is
Yeah.
powerful.
Or if it resonates with one or two people, and
Yeah.
says, wow, wow, I've experienced that. It's like we're not alone, you
Yeah.
know.
I mean, I felt that reading your poem. I didn't know you'd lost a sibling, and I have a little list in my mind and an actual list of people in case we ever do another anthology of people who've lost siblings because it's like there is something about that loss that is different than other ones. And it's not one we talk about as much, and especially I think if it's attached to either suicide or addiction. I have
Yeah.
found in the book, in making that book, it felt like those losses were the ones that get talked about the least.
Well, and they're the most complicated too.
Yeah,
So yeah. So it's those are tough subjects.
yeah,
Those are tough subjects. But anyway.
yeah. So, anything
Um,
else that you'd like to share before we wrap up? It was such a pleasure
no, other than
sitting
this
down
is
with you.
this is a great experience. I'm gonna, say what Kelly said last week is just the exercise doing this poem on your birthday, I think is a great idea because it's it's where you are at that point in time, where I'm from, but from where I am now
Yep,
as I
that's
write
true.
this,
Hmm.
and I went on an outward bound trip once, and they wanted us to write a letter to ourselves, which I at the time thought I'm not doing that, so I didn't do it. But I think this is kind of interesting because it's like a letter to yourself that you can go back and say, what did I write to myself 5 years ago? Oh my God! Like one, it's terribly written, but two, like, it's kind of like I've gotten through that or whatever, or I
Hmm.
haven't yet dealt with that, or something. I think it's interesting to do and just hang on to them.
And what
So
you're focusing on and what has your attention. And yeah, I
yeah,
agree.
yeah.
It's I Outward Bound also just feels like something from the past. Like that was such a moment when so many people were doing Outward Bound. And now I'm like, I actually thought like not long ago, does it still exist? I think it
It does.
does.
I think it does.
But just I don't feel like it's in the zeitgeist the way that it once was. Um,
Well, I don't know about you, but I think I'm too old for Outward Bound now.
I
So
am definitely too old for Outward Bound. I'd be like, no, that's not good for my knees. I can't do that.
exactly,
Sorry. I
exactly.
don't. I need to. I'm here for the long haul, which is what I am always talking about with my Pilates teacher. Like, I just want to be doing things as long as I possibly can.
That's right.
Um, it doesn't need to be extreme things, but things. I want to be able to take walks as long as I can, you know. Um,
Yeah.
so
You
that's
keep
the goal.
moving.
Yep. Well, thank you, Allison.
Thank you. Thank you. This was fun.
Yep. Okay. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Take care.
You too.